Chapter 21: Institutional Fragility, Threshold Dynamics, Nonlinear Decline, and the Suddenness of Collapse. Institutional fragility is the terminal expression of the capability, complexity imbalance. It is the stage at which systems that appear stable, coherent, and enduring can fail abruptly with little warning. Fragility is not visible weakness, it is latent instability. A fragile system may function smoothly for years, sometimes decades, because redundant layers, legacy infrastructure, and the residual competence of older generations conceal underlying deterioration. But once key thresholds are crossed, decline becomes nonlinear. Small shocks that once would have been trivial now propagate across the system, triggering cascading failures. Understanding fragility requires accepting a counterintuitive truth: collapse is sudden, but decline is always slow. The long processes that degrade competence, hollow out institutions, dilute norms, weaken education, and accumulate bureaucracy operate quietly in the background. The system continues functioning because earlier generations built robust frameworks capable of absorbing error. But as capability density thins and institutional load rises, the margin for error narrows. The system remains complex, but the operators become fewer, less skilled, or less cohesive. Fragility is the moment these trajectories converge. Fragility is not merely a shortage of capability. It is the structural condition produced when positive feedback loops, once engines of growth, reverse direction. High-capability societies generate innovation, productivity, and institutional confidence, which attract talent, investment, and stability. But once capability declines, the same reinforcing loops accelerate decay. Innovation slows, productivity weakens, political trust erodes, dissatisfaction rises, institutional legitimacy falters. A society that once strengthened itself now undermines itself. This inversion creates the preconditions for sudden collapse. Every complex institution, finance, healthcare, education, justice, defense, energy, transportation, contains hidden thresholds. When capability falls below these thresholds, performance does not decline gradually, it breaks discontinuously. Financial systems illustrate this clearly. High-capability regulators and analysts can absorb minor errors. But when capability declines, small mispricings, misreports, or miscalculations compound rapidly. A policy mistake that once would have been easily corrected can morph into a systemic crisis. This pattern has repeated across emerging markets and within global credit systems. Fragility emerges not from the shock itself, but from the system's inability to detect and neutralize risk before it cascades. Healthcare systems follow the same logic. A hospital can withstand modest staffing shortages, but when chronic understaffing combines with declining training standards and rising administrative load, even a minor infectious disease surge can exceed capacity. The pandemic of 2020 exposed this dynamic across nations. Mortality differentials reflected institutional capability more than viral biology. Systems assumed to be resilient were revealed to be brittle. Energy grids show another expression of fragility. Modern power systems depend on continuous, precise balancing. As capability erodes among engineers, regulators, and maintenance crews, deferred maintenance accumulates and error tolerance shrinks. A transformer failure, a forecast error, or a small weather event, once survivable, can cascade across an interconnected grid. Fragility exposes itself when a system that once absorbed shocks becomes a system that transmits them. Justice systems are equally vulnerable. A manageable backlog becomes dangerous when prosecutorial capacity declines, police recruitment thins, and bureaucratic complexity rises. At a certain point, courts reach saturation. Cases languish. Dismissals rise. Deterrence collapses. Crime increases. Political pressure intensifies. Public order deteriorates not because society suddenly becomes more criminal, but because the justice system crosses a hidden threshold. Infrastructure behaves similarly. Bridges degrade incrementally, corrosion, fatigue, deferred inspections, but appear sound until a load spike pushes them past a structural limit. Water networks operate with leaks and pressure fluctuations until a minor disturbance triggers catastrophic failure. These events reveal decades of underinvestment and administrative decay that had been invisible beneath the surface. Political systems demonstrate fragility most dramatically. Polarization is manageable when institutional trust remains high. But when institutions lose coherence and capability, political disagreements become destabilizing. Elections become contested, administrative irregularities escalate, procedural disputes evolve into constitutional crises. Fragility arises from structural weakness, not ideological conflict. A political system reliant on high-capability institutions cannot function once those institutions degrade. This dynamic is evident in states that attempted rapid democratization without sufficient administrative or educational foundations. Constitutions were drafted, elections held, institutions created, but capability density was insufficient to sustain them. The outcome was instability, corruption, and eventual authoritarian reversion. Fragility was present from inception because complexity exceeded capability. Demographic shocks can trigger fragility as well. A shrinking workforce supporting an expanding elderly population can experience fiscal crisis. Pension systems become untenable. Healthcare burdens escalate. Taxes rise. Investment falls. Younger cohorts emigrate. As the economy contracts, the state's fiscal capacity erodes. At a certain point, fiscal fragility becomes political fragility. Governments lose legitimacy, reforms become impossible, and public expectations exceed the system's ability to deliver. Immigration interacts with fragility in nonlinear ways. Early-stage immigration can strengthen state capacity when institutions are coherent and capable. Late-stage immigration, when institutions are already overloaded and capability density is thinning, increases administrative complexity and accelerates fragility. The system reaches a point where it can no longer integrate new populations effectively. Fragmentation rises. Parallel systems form. Minor tensions escalate into major disruptions. Small shocks produce disproportionate effects because the system's absorptive capacity has evaporated. Fragility is therefore not about collapse events but collapse conditions. The events, financial crises, political breakdowns, infrastructure failures, are merely triggers. The conditions accumulate over decades: declining competence, rising complexity, demographic inversion, institutional overload, and bureaucratic sclerosis. Once these conditions exist, the triggers become inevitable. Fragility is reversible only early in the process. After certain thresholds are crossed, fertility collapse, educational decline, institutional ossification, capability thinning, the system loses the ability to self-correct. Incremental reforms cannot rebuild lost competence. Only radical simplification, decentralization, contraction, or institutional reset can restore equilibrium. The alternative is unmanaged collapse. The final insight is straightforward. Fragile societies look stable until the moment they are not. The British Empire appeared globally dominant until it rapidly relinquished its holdings. The Soviet Union appeared monolithic until it dissolved. The late Roman Empire appeared intact until its frontier garrisons vanished. Modern states that project stability, whether in North America, Europe, or East Asia, may likewise cross invisible thresholds where capability decline silently exceeds institutional resilience. In the next chapter, we examine elite overproduction, how societies generate more credentialed elites than high-capability roles available, why this destabilizes institutions, and how it interacts with the capability, complexity gap to accelerate systemic decline.